The shouting hit me before I even stepped fully out of the elevator. It sliced through the late-night quiet of Hale Tower's lobby, too loud, too harsh, and completely out of place in a nearly empty building at midnight. I stopped walking. A security guard stood near the revolving doors, towering over a little girl curled tightly on the bench. She could not have been more than 6. Her arms wrapped around a faded purple backpack as if it were a shield. Rain dripped from her thin jacket, forming small puddles beneath her shoes. Her big green eyes were wide with fear, and when the guard raised his voice again, she lifted her arms as if expecting something worse than yelling. That single reflex told me more about her world than anything he could have said. "You cannot stay here," the guard snapped. "This area is restricted. If your mother left you here alone, I have to report it. CPS will handle the rest." The word CPS landed like a blow. Any child in America knows what it means to be taken away. The girl trembled so hard, the bench vibrated under her. I felt something cold pull at me, and I stepped forward before I even thought about it. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice low. The guard jerked around, stiffening when he saw me. "Mr. Hale!" I was just following protocol. "She has been sitting here for almost an hour. No parent, no permission. It is a security risk. She is a child," I said, "and you do not raise your voice at a child. Ever." He swallowed hard and stepped back. I turned my attention to the little girl. She had tucked her chin into her chest, tears streaking silently down her cold, flushed cheeks. I knelt so I could meet her eyes. "You are not in trouble, I promise." She blinked at me in confusion, unused to softness. After a long moment, she whispered, "I am sorry. Mommy told me to wait. She said she would not be long. She said she had to work even if she was sick because we need money for food." Something twisted sharply inside me. "Your mother works here?" I asked gently. She nodded. "She cleans the offices on 17 tonight, but she said she might faint again. She said she would be quick, but she is not back." My chest tightened. "When did she go up?" "I do not know. A long time ago." She dug into her jacket pocket with shaky fingers and handed me a wrinkled piece of paper. "Mommy said if something happens to her, I should give this to someone." The paper was soft from being folded too many times. One line was written across it in shaky handwriting. "If something happens to me, please call this number." I pulled out my phone and dialed. A robotic voice responded immediately. "This number is no longer in service." The girl's breath hitched. She bit her lip so hard it turned white. "Mommy tried to fix it, but she could not pay. She thought people would not help us unless she made it easy. But she cannot breathe well anymore. And she keeps falling." The phrase "kept falling" hit somewhere deep and old in me. I stood the paper still in my hand. "Call your supervisor," I told the guard. "We are checking 17 now." He hurried away. The little girl rose to her feet. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please do not fire Mommy. She said sick people get replaced. She said if she rests, we will not have food." I inhaled sharply. "No one is firing your mom. I promise you that." Outside, rain streaked down the glass in shimmering sheets. The building hummed quietly around us, every sound amplified by the late hour. I looked down at her small, trembling frame, the soaked jacket, the hope buried under fear in her eyes. Something old and familiar stirred in me, something I had avoided for years. Pain, and the knowledge of what it means when no one shows up for you. "Come on, Mia," I said softly. "Let us go find your mother." Her cold little hand slipped into mine without hesitation. The elevator doors closed around us. I stared at the dead phone number again, at the desperate handwriting. The system failed this woman, and I realized I was done pretending not to see. I have spent my entire life walking past pain, avoiding anything that cut too close. But that night, one frightened look from a child stopped me completely, and I knew I was not walking away from this. Not again. Not ever. The elevator climbed with a low mechanical hum, each passing floor tightening the air around us. Mia clung to my hand, her other arm wrapped around her worn backpack as if it contained the last safe thing in her world. Her breathing was small and quick, a fragile rhythm that matched the faint tapping of rain against the elevator shaft. When the doors slid open onto the security level, the guard I had summoned earlier hurried toward us clutching a tablet. "Mr. Hale," he said, glancing nervously at Mia before lowering his voice. We scanned the building logs. Her mother checked in at 7, but there is no record of her returning to the lobby. No motion activity around her usual zones for almost half an hour. That was too long, far too long. "Show me," I said. He tapped the tablet, pulling up a map of the building with colored zones meant to track janitorial movement. 17 was nearly blank, only scattered heat signatures from earlier hours. "She is not moving," he added. My jaw tightened. Mia tugged at my sleeve. "This is when she usually falls," she whispered. Her words hit harder than they should have. Usually falls. No child should know that pattern. No child should say it with resignation instead of fear. I lowered myself so we were eye to eye. "Has your mom fallen before during work?" Mia nodded once. "She tries to hide it. She said people do not keep sick workers. She said she has to be strong or we will have nowhere to live." The weight of it pressed against me sharper than my own pulse. I looked up at the guard. "Get 2 more officers. We are checking 17. Now." We entered the elevator again this time with more urgency. The ride felt longer, the soft whir of the cables somehow louder. Mia stood pressed against my side, her small frame shaking despite her efforts to be brave. When the doors opened on the 17th floor, the lights flickered in a way I had never noticed during working hours. That floor was typically bustling with employees, printers, ringing phones. At night, it should have been simply quiet. Instead, it felt abandoned, silent in the wrong way. The kind of silence that suggested something had gone wrong. We stepped out. The air smelled strongly of industrial cleaner, sharper than usual. The security officers split in opposite directions, moving down the hallways with flashlights even though the overheads still glowed. I kept Mia close my hand steady on her shoulder, though my own stomach had begun to coil with unease. A tipped-over mop bucket appeared around the corner water spreading thinly across the tile in uneven streaks. A broken mop handle lay a foot away, snapped clean in the middle. Mia gasped softly. "That is Mommy's bucket. She never leaves it like that." I crouched, touching the broken handle. It was still warm, meaning it had snapped recently. The guard's radio crackled with static. "Sir, the feed is glitching on this floor. Cameras keep cutting out." That had never happened before. I moved faster now, following the trail of water leading toward the east corridor. My polished shoes splashed lightly with each step, the sound unnervingly loud in the emptiness. The corridor lights flickered again. Something about the rhythm felt wrong, as if the building itself was trying to warn us. Mia squeezed my hand tighter. Her voice was barely a breath. "She said not to tell anyone when she falls. She said people do not help." I stopped. Kneeling beside her, I spoke firmly but quietly. "People do help Mia. I am here, and I am not leaving until we find her." Her lips trembled as she nodded. We moved again. One of the guards called out from ahead. "Over here." We hurried toward him. His flashlight pointed at the doorknob of the women's restroom. A faint smear of red clung to the metal. Blood. My pulse thudded hard in my ears. Mia inhaled sharply, her small fingers digging into my hand. "Mommy." The guard reached for the door. "Stand back," he warned gently. But Mia made a small, distressed sound, a terrified whimper she was trying to swallow. I looked at the guard. "Open it. Now." He pushed the door slowly, cautiously. The restroom lights were half out, plunging part of the room into shadow. The air inside felt too still. No movement. No sound. A pale cleaning cloth lay crumpled on the floor. Another faint streak of blood near the sinks. Mia whimpered again, covering her mouth. I scanned the room. No Lily. The guard checked each stall, each corner. Nothing. The radio crackled again. Cameras down in every hallway near the eastern wing. That made no sense. Unless she collapsed where the cameras could not see. Unless she was somewhere further down the corridor alone, unreachable. Fear surged up my spine. Not helpful fear. Not the kind you can analyze. It was the old kind. the kind that comes from memory, the kind I had spent my adult life refusing to feel. Mia's voice pulled me back. "Please," she whispered. "Please find her." I stood looking down the dim hallway beyond the restroom. A cold draft drifted in from somewhere, carrying a scent of disinfectant and something metallic. My heartbeat sharpened. "We will," I said. "And when we find her, I promise she will not face this alone, ever again." The guard swallowed, gripping his flashlight. "Sir, that wing is almost completely dark. The sensor logs stop there." "Then, that is where we go," I said. We stepped into the corridor, the lights buzzing faintly overhead. Behind me, Mia held firmly to my hand, her trust absolute. And ahead of us, somewhere in the shadows of the silent 17th floor, a woman who had fought too long by herself had finally run out of strength. The deeper we walked into the east wing of the 17th floor, the more the air seemed to thicken. It was not fear exactly. It was the feeling that something had already happened, and we were only discovering the aftermath. The lights flickered in uneven pulses, casting long, jerky shadows along the tiled hallway. Mia's small hand squeezed mine tighter each time a light blinked out and back in. She stayed close to my leg, her breaths shallow and quick. I kept my pace steady, even though my own heartbeat had begun to pound in my temples. The first true sign appeared near the supply alcove. A blue latex glove lay crumpled on the floor, smeared faintly with diluted red. Another glove lay a few feet ahead, as if dropped mid-step. I crouched and touched the tile beside it. The floor was strangely warm, the kind of warmth left behind by someone who had been working there not long ago. Mia let out a soft whimper. "That is Mommy's glove. She only uses the blue ones because the white ones hurt her hands." I looked at her. Hurt her hands how? Mia hesitated, biting her lip. "They make her skin bleed sometimes. The chemical stuff. She said it is fine. She said it will get better once she is strong again. But she is getting weaker." Something sharp and bitter twisted in my chest. I stood and signaled the nearest guard to move ahead. His flashlight beam swept the walls, illuminating streaks of water trailing down from the supply closet door. It swung slightly as if it had been pushed and not fully latched. The guard opened it slowly. Inside shelves of neatly arranged supplies filled the space, but the lower shelf held a toppled container of industrial cleaner that had spilled across the floor. The smell was sharp enough to sting the eyes. A cleaning rag soaked in the liquid lay crumpled near the wall. The rag was stained pink. "Not all of that is cleaner," the guard said under his breath. My jaw locked. The silence around us seemed to grow heavier. We continued moving, passing offices whose glass doors reflected our dim shapes. Rain drummed faintly on the building's outer windows, the sound muted by the thick walls yet still present enough to seem like a distant heartbeat. Mia's voice came as a small, trembling whisper. "Mommy said sometimes she sees black spots before she falls. She says if she rests for too long she will lose her job." She looked up at me with solemn eyes that did not belong on a child. She said people like us do not get to be tired. For a moment I could not speak. I only tightened my grip around her hand and guided her forward. A few yards later, we found something worse. Near the corner leading to the restroom annex, a thin smear of blood stretched across the floor, barely visible unless the light hit it at a certain angle. The guard lowered his flashlight and followed the streak with the beam. It led toward the annex doors. Mia's breath hitched. "That is from her hands," she whispered. "The chemicals hurt her skin so much she bleeds. But she keeps working, because she has to." I stared at the faint red trail. It was not from injury caused by the spill. The streak was clearly from someone crawling or dragging themselves along the floor. My heartbeat grew louder in my ears. We reached the annex doors. They were slightly ajar, the gap narrow, but enough to feel a draft coming through. A cold draft, too cold. I pushed the door open. Half of the lights inside the annex flickered wildly. The other half had died completely, leaving pockets of darkness scattered across the space. Mia pressed against my leg, her fingers trembling. I scanned the area. A janitor's cart lay tipped over near the lockers. A stack of folded towels had spilled across the floor. Someone had gripped the edge of a locker door so tightly that faint, bloody fingerprints remained on the metal. I moved forward quickly. The guard checked the private restrooms one by one, each door swinging open with a hollow echo. all empty. I felt the tension coil in my spine. She has to be close, I muttered. Look for any place she might have gone for help, or where she might have collapsed. Mia tugged at my sleeve again. Her voice was barely sound. Mommy said if she falls, she crawls somewhere quiet so no one sees. She said people do not want to look at someone sick. The words stopped me cold. My throat tightened with something fierce and unforgiving. No one should have to crawl into darkness to keep their job. Not in my building. Not anywhere. I moved into the back hallway of the annex, a narrow corridor that only staff used. It was dimmer than the rest, the overhead bulbs buzzing weakly. Halfway down the hall, the guard's radio gave a burst of sharp static. "Cameras in this wing are down again," he reported. "We cannot get a visual of anything beyond your position." That confirmed it. Lily was somewhere in the shadows ahead of us. I walked faster. Mia struggled to keep up, so I lifted her into my arms. She curled against me instantly, clutching my shirt. At the far end of the hallway, I saw it. Another glove, a thin trail of watery red leading to the last door on the right. The door was slightly open. A faint sound came from inside. A wet, uneven sound. Breathing. I shifted Mia higher in my arms and pushed the door gently. The room was dark, but the light from the hallway spilled enough to illuminate the shape on the floor. A woman. Crumpled. Still. Mia gasped, her voice breaking. "Mommy!" The guard moved forward, but I raised a hand sharply. "I need to reach her first." My pulse hammered as I stepped into the room. The air felt too still, too heavy. And then I went down on one knee beside her, reaching out with trembling fingers. Lily. She did not respond. Her skin was cold, and in that moment, surrounded by the silent corridors of a building that had missed every sign of her suffering, I felt something inside me break, wide open. Lily lay motionless on the cold tile, her body curled inward as if she had folded in on herself at the very last moment she was conscious. For a second, I could not move. The room spun with the low hum of the building's ventilation, the flicker of dying lights, and the rapid thud of my heartbeat. Mia clung to my neck, trembling violently, her breath hot and uneven against my collar. Her small fingers gripped my shirt with desperate strength. I lowered her gently to one of the guards who crouched to hold her securely. She whimpered but let go, too terrified to protest. I moved closer to Lily. Her cheek rested against the floor, pale and damp with sweat. Her lips had a faint bluish tone and shallow breaths escaped her in uneven gasps, as if each one required a fight she was losing. Her right hand twitched fingers spasming slightly. The skin was raw, reddened from chemical irritation, the knuckles cracked. I touched her shoulder carefully. "Lily, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered but did not open. The guard behind me spoke quietly. "We need medics. Now." I nodded. "Call them. Tell them she is semi-conscious difficulty breathing, possible autoimmune event or chemical exposure onset." The guard relayed the message with urgency. I lifted Lily slowly, supporting her head as I turned her onto her back. She weighed almost nothing. Too thin. Too fragile. Her chest rose in uneven motions, each breath sounding weaker than the one before. Mia reached toward her from the guard's arms, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, please wake up, please." I steadied my voice. "Mia, the doctors will help her. I promise you she is not alone. I promise." The guards cleared space around us. The annex lights continued flickering in that strange intermittent rhythm, as if the building itself could not decide whether to illuminate this moment or hide it. While we waited for medics, I forced myself to think clearly. I needed to know what had led to this, how long she had been suffering, how much had been ignored. I turned to one of the guards. "Show me the camera feeds on your tablet." He swallowed and handed it over. The screen flickered with a grid of thumbnails. Several feeds were dark or corrupted, especially those closest to where we found her, but some footage remained intact from earlier in the evening. I opened a feed from 2 hours prior. The hallway outside the main office corridor appeared. Lily pushed her cart along the tile, moving with slow determination. She paused to brace herself against the wall, one hand pressed tightly to her abdomen. She inhaled sharply, pain crossing her features, but then forced herself upright again. She continued pushing the cart legs unsteady. The footage cut to her cleaning the far hallway. Sudden weakness bent her forward. She clutched her mop for balance and closed her eyes tightly. I could almost hear the sound of her breathing, even though the footage had no audio. She shook once, twice, then straightened her back and pushed on. She worked in silence. She worked through pain. She worked because she believed she had no other choice. The next clip stunned me. A pair of late-shift analysts walked right past her as she leaned against a water fountain, clearly struggling. They did not even glance in her direction. One had earbuds in. The other stared at his phone. Lily swallowed hard, forced a small, polite smile, and stepped aside so they would not have to alter their path. The analysts passed as though she did not exist. I felt anger rise in me, deep and cold. They did not see her. None of us did. Not until tonight. Another clip showed Lily bending down to lift an overturned trash bin. As she did, her body wavered. She caught herself on the edge of a desk, breathing heavily, her face tight with pain. She tried again, slower this time. My jaw clenched. I checked the timestamp. This was an hour before we found her. The next feed flickered in and out, fractured by static. But in one frozen frame, Lily appeared on her knees near a supply cabinet, gripping her side with both hands. The moment the frame unpaused, she collapsed forward. Mia let out a cry when she saw it. I reached out to steady her trembling. "It is just footage," I whispered. "She is getting help now." Mia buried her face against the guard's shoulder. The next few clips showed only empty hallways, the quiet aftermath of workers passing through without noticing the faint signs left behind. A dropped glove, a streak of diluted blood, a mop handle broken clean in half. Another fragmented clip showed Lily trying to stand. Her palms pressed flat against the floor. Her knees shook. She lifted her head toward the camera. Her eyes were unfocused, filled with fear and exhaustion, but in that moment she seemed to look directly into the lens, as if silently asking for anyone to see her. Then she fell again. The footage ended abruptly, the next file corrupted. I lowered the tablet slowly. The guards looked shaken. Mia was crying silently now, tiny shoulders hunched. My throat tightened. "Someone has to answer for this," I said quietly. "Someone has to explain how she was on the ground for so long without help." One guard spoke. "Sir, most people on this floor wear headphones during after hours, and she always worked quietly. She never asked for anything." That last sentence echoed inside me like a stone sinking in water. She never asked for anything. No one should have to collapse for the world to notice them. A distant clatter signaled the arrival of medics. Their footsteps pounded down the hall, crisp and urgent. As they reached us, one paramedic knelt beside Lily, checking her airway and pulse. "Weak carotid, semi-responsive. We need to move fast." They lifted her onto a stretcher. Mia reached out, her voice breaking. "Mommy, please do not go." The medic softened. "You can ride with us if it is okay with him." He nodded toward me. "I will take her," I said immediately. And before I even realized it, I had slipped into a role I had avoided my entire adult life. Someone who stayed. Someone who showed up. Someone who refused to walk past suffering in silence. The medics worked quickly, but everything around me felt strangely slow, as if time itself had thickened into something heavy and resistant. I followed them down the dim hallway, staying close enough to reach the stretcher if Lily slipped again. Mia was still in my arms, her small fingers clutching the collar of my coat, as if letting go would make her mother disappear forever. Her trembling had not stopped. Each breath she took was a soft, uneven gasp soaked in fear. The guards cleared a path ahead of us, their flashlights cutting through the flickering lights and long shadows of the 17th floor. The rain outside continued to lash against the windows, each strike echoing faintly through the walls like distant warnings. When we reached the elevator, one medic tapped the control panel. The doors opened, and they guided the stretcher inside with practiced precision. I stepped in immediately after them, settling with Mia pressed against my chest. She buried her face in my coat the moment the doors slid shut, muffling a small sob. One medic took Lily's vitals again, frowning at the numbers. Blood pressure dangerously low, respirations unstable. He looked at the other medic. Possible shock. She needs intervention now. The elevator ride felt too slow, even though it moved at its usual speed. Every second stretched, every faint ding marking each passing floor a reminder that time was slipping far too quickly for Lily and far too slowly for the rest of us. When we reached the lobby, the doors opened to reveal a flurry of movement. Building security had already cleared the area, and the ambulance crew waited just outside the main entrance under the building's awning, shielding their equipment from the pouring rain. The cold night air swept in as we exited the elevator, carrying the sharp scent of wet pavement and pine from the street. The medics maneuvered the stretcher through the lobby and out the door. Mia lifted her head at the sudden rush of cold, her shivering intensifying. Her voice cracked when she tried to speak. "Is Mommy dying?" The question pierced through me so sharply I almost lost my breath. I tightened my hold on her. "No, Mia. She is fighting. And she is not fighting alone anymore." She stared up at me with eyes that held far too much fear for someone her age. The ambulance doors swung open. The medics loaded Lily inside, attaching her to monitors, checking her oxygen, preparing IV fluids. I climbed in right behind them, Mia still holding on to me as if her life depended on it. The doors slammed shut. The siren remained off for the moment. The ambulance lurched forward, pulling onto the street and accelerating into the rain-soaked city. Inside, the confined space vibrated with the hum of equipment and the low murmur of paramedics communicating in short-clipped phrases. Lily's body jolted slightly with each bump in the road. Mia's gaze never left her mother. She reached toward Lily with a trembling hand, her voice barely a whisper. "Mommy, please, wake up, please." One medic glanced at her sympathetically before turning to me. "She trusts you," he said quietly. "It helps that you are here. She needs calm more than anything right now." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Lily's breaths were shallow and fast, each one sounding thinner than the last. A faint rattling accompanied her exhale. Her fingers twitched, curling weakly around nothing. Her eyelids fluttered but did not open. The medic adjusted the oxygen mask. "Pulse 35. Oxygen dropping. We need to stabilize her quickly." Mia whimpered at the sound of the machines. I pulled her closer, letting her head rest against my shoulder. She clutched my coat with both hands, terrified and desperate. "She works so I can eat," she whispered into my shirt. "She said she cannot stop or we will not have anywhere to live." That familiar ache rose again, sharp and merciless. I had heard that kind of reasoning before from someone who had worked herself into an early grave because she believed rest was a luxury she could not afford. I looked at Lily, pale and struggling on the stretcher. I saw the truth in every breath she fought to take. She had been carrying the world alone, and no one had noticed. The ambulance hit a turn, the motion rocking us slightly. The medic steadied the equipment. Her heart rhythm is unstable. Preparing another dose. The monitor beeped erratically, each sharp note clawing at my nerves. Mia squeezed my arm. "Do something. Please, do something." I swallowed hard. "I am here," I whispered. "And I will not let anything happen to her." The words were a promise I felt down to my bones. The medic looked up. "Sir, if you are family, we will need your consent for some interventions." I met his eyes without hesitation. "Do whatever you need to keep her alive." He nodded once and returned to his work. Those next seconds felt like an eternity. The steady hum of the engine, the rain pounding against the roof, the faint metallic rattle of equipment all blended into a surreal soundtrack of urgency and dread. Then the medic spoke again. Pulse stabilizing slightly. Oxygen improving. For now. Relief washed through me, not enough to ease the tension tightening every muscle in my body, but enough to breathe again. The hospital came into view outside, the rain-streaked windows. Bright lights cut through the storm, glowing like a beacon. As the ambulance rolled to a stop, the doors burst open and the emergency team rushed forward. Mia clung to me as we followed the stretcher into the bright, sterile corridors of the hospital. Nurses and doctors moved quickly, their voices a low, orchestrated urgency. Lily was wheeled through a set of double doors marked restricted. A nurse stopped me. "Sir, we need to stabilize her condition before anyone can go in. Please wait in the family area." The words family area echoed strangely in my mind. I looked down at Mia. Her small body shook with exhaustion and fear. I lifted her into my arms again. She rested her head on my shoulder, barely able to keep her eyes open. We entered the waiting area. The lights were softer there, the chairs empty. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant, but the warmth of the heaters contrasted the icy rain outside. Mia held my coat tightly, whispering through trembling lips. "Will she come back?" My voice felt thick as I answered. "Yes, Mia. And I am not leaving until she does." She closed her eyes, trusting me without hesitation. And as she drifted into an exhausted half-sleep against my chest, I realized that for the first time in years, I was terrified of losing someone I had only just begun to understand. The waiting room felt too bright, too quiet, too clean for what was happening behind the sealed ICU doors. The hum of fluorescent lights vibrated in the air, the soft television on the wall playing muted late-night news that no one was watching. Rain streaked the wide windows, blurring the outside world into gray smudges of motion. I held Mia in my lap, her small head resting against my chest, her body curled in on itself like she was trying to make less room for fear. Every few minutes, she twitched as if she were falling in a dream, then clutched my shirt tighter. Her breathing came in tiny, uneven puffs. She was beyond exhausted, but too frightened to fall fully asleep. A nurse approached her steps quiet on the polished floor. She crouched beside us. "The doctors are working on stabilizing her mother. She is in critical condition, but still responsive to treatment. We will update you once she is fully assessed." Mia stirred, lifting her head. The nurse offered a gentle smile. "Your mommy is fighting very hard." Mia blinked at her, then at me, silently asking whether she could believe those words. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "She can hear you even if she cannot respond. She is not leaving you." The nurse nodded, then stood and slipped away. The moment she left, the quiet returned in full force. It settled on the room like a weight. I stared at the double doors that led to the ICU, the doors that had swallowed Lily only minutes earlier. My jaw tightened. I had seen people leave through doors like that before and never return. Not again, I told myself. Not this time. Mia shifted again, and I realized she was trying to unclip her backpack. I helped her slide it off. She unzipped it and pulled out a small drawing. A stick figure mother with a big smile. A small figure holding her hand. A sun in the corner, lopsided but shining. She pressed the paper to her chest. "I made this for Mommy. I wanted to give it to her tonight." She said after work we would go home together. The tears in her voice were small but sharp, the kind that made my own throat ache with a tightness I had not felt in years. She looked up at me suddenly. "You will not let them take her away, right?" The question startled me. Take her away. Who? The doctors, or the people who take kids? CPS. She thinks if she rests too long, they will think she cannot take care of me. And if they think she cannot take care of me, they will take me. I stared at her frozen. She had lived with that fear for so long. She said it like it was inevitable. I leaned closer. "Mia, no one is taking you from your mother." She swallowed. "But she said sick people get replaced." I exhaled slowly, fighting to steady the anger rising in me. She was not wrong about the world, but she was not going to live that way anymore. Not if I had anything to say about it. A loud beep sounded from behind the ICU doors. Mia stiffened. I shifted her onto the chair and stood. A doctor rushed through the doors, calling to a nurse. "Get her lab stat. Her vitals are unstable again. We need another bolus." Mia grabbed my hand. "What does that mean? Is she dying?" I dropped to one knee beside her. "It means the doctors are helping her. They are making her body stronger." She stared at me with terrified eyes. "You are lying. You are just saying that to make me feel better." I hesitated. Then I told her the truth. I am saying it because she is still fighting, and because she can still win. She blinked, tears spilling but not falling. They clung to her lashes like tiny, cold stars. The ICU doors swung shut again. The room returned to stillness. I lifted her back into my arms. The chair beside us creaked as I sat, my mind racing through every detail I had seen tonight, every sign we had missed, every minute Lily had spent collapsing in silence. I felt the guilt in a way that chilled me. I ran a company of more than 5,000 employees. I had entire teams dedicated to well-being and safety. And yet a woman had been collapsing in my building for months, unnoticed, unseen, unheard. Mia's voice interrupted my thoughts. She whispered it without looking up. Mommy said no one cares unless you make them. I felt something hot build behind my eyes, something like anger but heavier. Someone should have cared. Someone should have seen her. A sudden memory burst into my mind, uninvited. My own mother, years ago, kneeling on a classroom floor after cleaning for hours, her hands cracked from chemicals, her breath short, the fluorescent lights too bright and cold. I had been a child, helpless as she struggled. I had promised myself I would never let anything like that happen again. And yet, here I was. The past had repeated itself in front of me in the eyes of a child who was not mine. Another beep echoed behind the ICU doors. Mia jolted, her entire body tightening. I rubbed her back gently. It is all right. I am right here. I will stay right here. Hours seemed to pass in that small waiting room. Eventually, a doctor emerged, his expression grim but not hopeless. He approached us slowly. Ms. Dawson is still critical, but she is stable enough for monitoring. We have identified a severe autoimmune flare. She will need intensive treatment. He paused before continuing. She has been living under extreme stress, lack of rest, lack of medication, likely malnutrition. Her body has been deteriorating for some time, Mia whimpered. But she will live. The doctor nodded. That is what we are fighting for. She is strong. She has held on longer than most would have. Relief washed over her face so quickly she sagged into my chest. I exhaled a breath I had been holding without realizing it. The doctor looked at me next. Are you her emergency contact? I shook my head. No, but I am staying. I will handle whatever she needs tonight. He nodded once, accepting that. Then he left us with one final instruction. When she wakes, she will need calm, and she will need someone she trusts. Mia gripped my arm, her voice no more than a whisper. She trusts you. My throat tightened. Then I will be here when she wakes. I am not leaving her again. The night inside the hospital felt different from the night outside. Out there, it was rain and wind and the distant sound of traffic battling the storm. In here, it was humming machines, soft footsteps echoing down sterile corridors, and the quiet fear that settled into your bones when you realized someone's life depended on the steady blinking of a monitor. Mia had finally drifted into a fragile sleep against me, her head resting on my shoulder, her small breaths warm through my shirt. I held her, carefully, afraid that even shifting might wake the thin thread of peace she had managed to find. A nurse passed by and paused beside us. She looked at Mia with a soft sadness. Poor thing, she must be exhausted. She is, I murmured. She has been terrified for hours. The nurse lowered her voice. Her mother is lucky you found her when you did. Another hour and her organs would have started to shut down. The words hit me hard, sharp as ice under the ribs. Another hour. One more overlooked cry for help. One more night of people walking past her. One more moment of pretending someone was fine just because she did not complain. My jaw tightened. I wanted to ask the nurse how many times this happened. How many workers collapsed under the weight of their lives because rest was a luxury they could not afford. But she had already moved on, disappearing into one of the side rooms. I stayed in the waiting area, listening to Mia's breathing, focusing on the weight of her small body curled against me. It anchored me in a way I could not quite explain. It kept me from drowning in the sea of guilt rising inside me. When the ICU doors finally opened again, a doctor stepped out. This one was older, with silver hair and a steady, reassuring expression. He scanned the room until his eyes found me. Are you with Ms. Dawson? Yes. He gestured for me to follow him. I looked down at Mia. I did not want to wake her, but I could not leave her alone either. The doctor nodded as if understanding. Bring her. It is okay. I adjusted my grip and followed him down the hall. The ICU smelled faintly of antiseptic and cool metal. Soft beeping created an uneven rhythm as machines monitored life second by second. We stopped outside a room with frosted glass walls. The doctor spoke quietly. She has stabilized enough to remain conscious for short periods, but she is still extremely weak. When you enter, keep your voice gentle and your movements slow. She may not be able to stay awake long. I nodded. My hand tightened around Mia's back. She stirred, lifting her head slightly. Is Mommy awake? Yes, sweet girl. Do you want to see her? Her eyes widened, and she clung to me as the doctor opened the door. The air in the room felt colder. A steady beep, beep, beep filled the space, slow but firm. Lily lay against white pillows, her skin pale under the harsh overhead lights. Her golden brown hair was damp strands clinging to her forehead. Her lips were dry and cracked. Her hands resting atop the sheets were swollen, the knuckles inflamed from the lupus flare. But she was breathing. Slowly, shallowly, but breathing. Mia whispered, Mommy. Lily's eyes fluttered, then opened unfocused at first, then sharpening slowly as they found the shape of her daughter. Her lips trembled. Mia! Her voice was barely more than air. Mia reached for her tears spilling instantly. Mommy, I was so scared. You did not come back. You fell again. I did not know where you were. I did not know. She dissolved into sobs. I stepped closer, lowering Mia onto the edge of the bed while keeping a protective hand on her back. Lily lifted a trembling hand to her daughter's cheek. I am sorry, baby. I am so sorry. She looked exhausted even saying those few words. As Mia buried her face in her mother's chest, Lily's gaze lifted to mine. For the first time, she seemed to really see me. Recognition mixed with confusion. Why are you here? You should not have had to go through that alone, I said softly. We found you collapsed. She blinked slowly as if trying to remember. Her brow tightened. Did I faint again? Yes. Her eyes dimmed with shame. I told them I could work. I am fine. I just need to push through. I did not want them to replace me. Her breath hitched. I cannot lose this job. Not when Mia needs... She broke off as a painful cough shook through her body. The monitor beeped faster. I moved closer instinctively, reaching to steady her, but the doctor raised a hand. She needs calm, he reminded gently. Lily closed her eyes, breathing shallowly until she settled again. A nurse checked her vitals, then stepped away. When Lily looked at me again, there was something else in her eyes. Something guarded. Something afraid. Why did you bring me here? Why did you help us? I hesitated, then answered honestly. Because you needed someone. Because no one should have to collapse alone. Her eyes glistened with something painful. Something like disbelief. I do not accept help, she whispered. I cannot. If Mia sees me weak, she will think everything falls apart when Mommy is not strong. My throat tightened. Being strong is not the same as being alone, I said. Sometimes strength is letting someone stand with you. She stared at me as if trying to understand a language she had never been taught. Her lips parted, but before she could speak, she winced. The pain drained what little energy she had left. Mia crawled closer, curling against her mother's side. I reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. She flinched not from fear, but from the unfamiliarity of being cared for. The doctor approached the bed. She needs rest. Her body is fighting itself. The autoimmune flare was severe. She will be unconscious again soon. As if on cue, Lily's eyes began to close. Her final whisper slipped out on a breath. I cannot afford to be sick. Then her head rested back against the pillow, her body sinking into stillness. Mia froze, her breath hitching. Mommy, Mommy, I stroked her shoulder. She is resting, sweetheart. She is not leaving you. Mia sobbed softly and leaned into her mother again. I stayed beside them both, my hand on Mia's back, my heart pounding with guilt I could no longer deny. The truth was simple. My company had missed every sign, and I had missed every sign. But I was not going to miss another one. Not ever again. The morning light seeped into the hospital room through half-closed blinds, soft and muted, turning everything a pale gold. I had been awake the entire night, sitting in the hard plastic chair beside Lily's bed, with Mia curled against me like a small, exhausted bird. She had finally fallen asleep a few hours earlier, her tiny hand clutching my shirt even in her dreams. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications, speaking in hushed tones, as if afraid that too much noise might break what little stability Lily had regained. She remained unconscious for most of the morning, her breaths shallow but steady. The monitor hummed beside her, a constant reminder of how fragile she was in this moment. Every sound made me look at her, half expecting something to go wrong again. Eventually, Mia stirred in my lap. Her eyes fluttered open, red and tired, but gentler now. She blinked a few times before lifting her head. "Is Mommy still here?" "Yes, sweetheart. She is resting." Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. She slid off my lap and climbed carefully onto the edge of the hospital bed, curling beside her mother's arm. The way she touched Lily was instinctive, protective, as if she had practiced this routine many times. Maybe she had. Maybe she was used to being the one who watched her mother struggle to breathe. The thought hollowed something inside me. A few minutes later, Lily's eyelids began to twitch. Mia leaned forward instantly. "Mommy." Lily's brow tensed. Her chest rose in a deeper breath, then another. Slowly, painfully, her eyes opened. She blinked against the light, her gaze hazy at first. Then her eyes focused on Mia. Her lips curved weakly. "Hey, baby." Mia launched forward, wrapping her arms around her mother gently, as if afraid she might break. "You scared me, Mommy. You scared me so much." Lily exhaled a soft, trembling breath and rested her hand on her daughter's back. "I am sorry. I am so sorry." She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength. When she opened them again, she finally looked at me. The recognition was slower this time. She looked confused, then embarrassed, then cautious, as if remembering she had been found at her weakest and could not piece together why I was still here. "Why are you—" She swallowed hard. "Why are you still here?" The question was not unkind. It was fearful, like she was afraid of the answer, afraid of what she now owed. I sat forward in the chair. "Because I found you collapsed in my building. Because Mia needed someone. Because you deserved help." Her expression shifted instantly, tightening with defensiveness. "I do not need help." Her voice cracked thin and strained. "I do not want charity. I cannot accept it." I shook my head. "It is not charity." She pulled her hand away from mine before I could even reach for it. Her eyes hardened, the faintest spark returning to them. "You do not understand. If people think I cannot work, they will replace me. I cannot risk losing my job. I cannot risk Mia losing everything." Her voice wavered on the last word, but her resolve did not. I could see it clearly. Her pride, her fear, and the deep, deep dignity she was trying desperately to protect. "I do not want to be rescued," she whispered. "I need to stand on my own. I need Mia to know that I can stand on my own." I nodded slowly, taking in every word, every tremor in her voice. "I am not trying to rescue you. Lily." Her eyes flicked toward me, skeptical. "I am trying to tell you that no one stands alone forever, not even the strongest people, especially not them." She shook her head, her face tightening with pain, emotional more than physical. "You do not know what people say about women like me. Women who are tired. Women who cannot afford to rest. Women who work jobs no one notices. Women who clean up after everyone else's lives." Her voice began to fracture. "People do not see us. We are invisible. But if we fall behind, everyone notices, and they replace us without a second thought." Her words hit with the weight of truth. I had built an empire filled with people like her, people who held everything together quietly, people who kept their pain out of sight because they had learned long ago that the world punished visible struggle. I leaned forward slowly, speaking with a gentleness I had not used in years. "Lily, I saw you. Last night I saw you. You nearly died." Her jaw clenched. "I am alive now, and I will go back to work." She tried to sit up, but a stab of pain forced her to stop, her breath catching. The monitor beeped as her heart rate spiked. I reached out instinctively, but she raised a trembling hand to stop me. "Do not, please. If I let someone help me, Mia will think I am weak, and she cannot see weakness. She depends on me. Everything depends on me." She looked at her daughter, who watched her with wide, worried eyes. "And I cannot let her think I am someone who needs saving." I looked at Mia, then back at the woman fighting every breath to stay standing in front of her child. Lily, Mia does not need a perfect mother. She just needs her mother alive. The truth hung in the air, raw, heavy, real. Lily's lips parted, but no words came out. Her eyes dropped. She stared at her hands, the swollen knuckles, the bruised fingertips. She stared at the evidence of how hard she had fought, how long she had endured. She closed her eyes again. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. I cannot accept anything that makes me look weak in front of her. I cannot let her believe that someone else had to fix our lives. I kept my voice steady. Then I will not fix anything for you. Her eyes snapped open, startled. I will walk with you, but I will not take your dignity. Someday, if you let me, I will help in the way you choose. Not in the way I assume. She stared at me for a long moment, her breathing shallow but steadier now. Slowly, very slowly, her expression softened into something cautious and weary and undecided. Then, without a word, she turned her head back toward Mia. She let the conversation end there, but not with anger, with fear, with dignity, with a mother's impossible need to stay strong in a world designed to break her. And as she drifted back into a medicated sleep, I knew this was only the beginning. She had survived the night. But the battle for her life, for her pride for her future, was only now beginning. By the time Lily fell back into a medicated sleep, the morning had fully broken outside. Soft light filtered through the blinds, cutting thin stripes across the hospital floor. Mia had curled up in the chair beside her mother's bed, finally resting in a way that did not look tortured. I stood at the window, staring down at the city that hummed below us, a city that seemed indifferent to who survived its pressure and who collapsed beneath it. I had built a life inside that indifference. I had justified it as necessary, but last night had torn through every excuse I had ever made. A knock sounded softly at the door. The head nurse entered, carrying a clipboard. She glanced at Lily, then at me. She is stable for now, but she will need extensive follow-up care. Physical therapy, medication management, long-term monitoring. Her condition has been neglected for far too long. Neglected. The word hit me harder than I expected. I thanked the nurse and stepped into the hallway to make the calls I had been planning since the moment Lily collapsed. First was to HR. The director answered immediately, her voice tight with concern. Mr. Hale, we heard about the situation. What do you need from us? I kept my tone controlled. I am implementing a new program effective immediately. Night shift wellness, mandatory screenings, rotational scheduling to reduce physical strain, anonymous health benefits for all custodial staff, no questions asked. She hesitated. We will need to draft guidelines coordinate across departments. It will take several weeks to roll out properly. I do not want a rollout. I want action. Today. She paused again, this time longer. And Ms. Dawson. That was the part I had already prepared in my mind. She is to receive full medical leave with pay. I am approving a reassignment to a lighter daytime role upon her return. No write-ups, no performance marks, no questions. The director lowered her voice as if afraid someone might overhear. Sir, with respect, it may look like favoritism. I stopped at the window, watching the low clouds drift across the sky. Then it will look like we finally did something right. She exhaled slowly. Understood. We will take care of it. I ended the call and immediately placed another. This one to the company's legal team. The attorney answered with the clipped alertness of someone who worked too many late nights. Mr. Hale, what is the situation? I described the framework of a new compliance protocol. No punitive action for disclosed medical conditions. Guaranteed role adjustments under ADA guidance. Anonymous reporting pathways for workers too afraid to ask for help. The attorney was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. This is overdue. I agreed. Draft it. File it. Implement it quietly. And protect every employee who needs it. Especially one. When I returned to Lily's room, Mia was awake again. She sat stiffly in the chair, knees pulled to her chest as if preparing for bad news. Did they say Mommy can go home now? Not yet, sweetheart. She needs more rest. Mia nodded, but the fear stayed in her eyes. She looked smaller than she had last night, as if the weight of everything finally pressed down on her now that the crisis had passed. I crouched beside her. "How are you feeling?" She shrugged in that way children do when they do not have words for the storm inside them. She stared at her shoes for a long moment before speaking again. "Are they going to fire her?" "No." The answer came out so quickly and with such certainty that Mia blinked. I continued, "Your mom is still an employee. Nothing is going to change that." She exhaled shakily, some tension melting from her frame. "She said they fire people who get sick. Not anymore." She studied my face as if trying to decide whether grown-ups could keep their promises. Then she whispered, "Thank you." It was small, barely a sound, but it felt heavier than any praise I had ever received in a boardroom. I stood and approached Lily. Her breathing was steadier now. Her face, though pale, looked less strained in sleep. I watched her for a long time, thinking of how easily she could have slipped away unseen. A knock sounded again. This time it was the hospital's social worker. She entered with a folder in her hands and a measured expression. "We need to discuss Ms. Dawson's situation, her health, her employment support system's childcare arrangements." I kept my voice deliberately calm. "Her employment is secure, she will have paid leave, and I am covering her medical costs confidentially." The social worker's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she did not challenge it. "That is generous, but we also have to consider housing stability, food security, childcare contingencies." Before she could continue, Mia stood abruptly. "We do not need help. Mommy said we do not need help?" Her voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. The social worker crouched to her level. "Sweetheart, everyone needs help sometimes, even grown-ups." Mia shook her head fiercely. "If Mommy needs help, they will take her job. They will take me." A sound caught in her throat. "They cannot know she is sick." The social worker looked at me over Mia's head, eyes softening with understanding. "There it is. She is terrified of being separated from her mother." I knelt beside them. "Mia, listen to me. No one is taking you from your mom. Not now. Not ever. But she needs to get better. That means people have to help her." Mia's chin trembled. Her small body shook with silent sobs. I pulled her gently into my arms. She did not resist. She melted into me, clinging with both hands. The social worker stood and whispered, "She trusts you." I nodded. "I know." After she left, the room grew quiet again. I sat with Mia on my lap, watching Lily breathe, watching the machines blink, watching the faint color return to her cheeks. And I realized something with absolute clarity. I could not change the past. I could not bring back the person I had once failed to save. But I could change this. I could change everything about this. And I would. Quietly, legally, carefully, in a way that protected her dignity instead of taking it, in a way that allowed her to stand on her own, not because she had no other choice, but because she finally had support beneath her feet. Mia rested her head against my chest. I rested my hand on her back, and together we watched over the woman who had carried too many burdens alone for far too long. Lily was stable enough to be moved out of the ICU by the next afternoon. They transferred her to a quieter recovery room on the third floor, a space washed in soft, neutral colors and warm light. She looked fragile still, her skin pale against the starched white sheets, but there was more strength in her breathing, more clarity in her eyes when they opened. Mia stayed glued to her side, drawing pictures on scraps of paper the nurses had given her, whispering stories into her mother's shoulder as if afraid any moment of silence would make Lily disappear again. I spent most of the time in the hallway or near the window giving them space while staying close enough to respond if Lily needed anything. I wished she would sleep more, but she seemed determined to remain partially awake, as if rest itself was a threat she could not afford. Early evening settled into the room like a quiet visitor, dimming the light until the bedside lamp became the only glow. That was when Lily finally turned her head fully toward me. There was a different expression in her eyes now, something sharper. Something that said she had been thinking, replaying everything, piecing it together. I braced myself for the conversation I knew was coming. She waited until Mia was distracted with coloring before she spoke. "I need to ask you something." Her voice was thin but steady. I stepped closer. "Anything." She swallowed, her throat bobbing. Her eyes narrowed faintly. "They moved me to a different floor. gave me new medications, said I have medical leave now with pay. They said there was an internal directive. She paused, watching me carefully. One that came from upper management. I stayed quiet. She continued. My supervisor said my position will be adjusted when I return. No penalty, no write-ups, no questions. Her breath shook slightly. Things like that do not just happen, she whispered. Not to people like me. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them again, she was still staring at me, waiting, bracing, afraid of the answer, but needing it. Ethan, she said quietly, tell me the truth. Her voice grew tighter. Why did you help me? Why did you change things? I pulled the chair closer to her bed and sat. I let the silence settle before answering. Because I saw you. Something flickered in her expression. Confusion, disbelief, a trace of anger. And what does that mean? That I watched you collapse on a floor you had been cleaning for hours, that your daughter begged me not to fire you because she believed sick people get replaced, that you knew you were collapsing and you still forced yourself to stand because no one gave you any other choice. Her lips tightened. People survive worse. People like me do not get special treatment. You did not get special treatment, I said gently. You got attention. You got what every worker should have had in the first place. Your dignity is intact. Your job is secure. The rest is just fixing a broken system. She shook her head slowly. But why me? Why did you care? Plenty of people would have walked past. You could have walked past. For a moment, the room blurred at the edges, the memory surfacing like a painful echo. I leaned forward, my voice quieter now. When I was young, my mother worked 2 cleaning jobs. Nights, weekends, holidays. I waited for her in hallways just like Mia waited for you. She never rested. She could not, and she collapsed one night alone. No one saw her. No one helped her. I was too late. The words hung there, heavy and raw. Lily stared at me, her eyes widening. And when I saw you on that floor, struggling to breathe, your daughter wandering hallways looking for you, terrified, I paused, steadying my voice. I could not let history repeat itself. Not again. Not on my watch. She turned her face away for a moment, blinking quickly. And so you just decided to fix my life. It was not sarcasm. It was fear. Fear of owing something. Fear of losing something. Fear of being small in someone else's generosity. I shook my head. No. I decided to fix my building, fix my company, fix what should never have been broken, and I wanted to make sure you were safe. That is all. She let out a breath that trembled through her whole body. But people will talk. They will think I got special treatment because I cried in front of the boss. They will think I am weak. People always think something I said. What matters is what is true. And the truth is that you survived something no one should have to survive alone. She stared at her hands, at the swollen knuckles that had cleaned thousands of surfaces without recognition. She whispered, I do not want Mia to grow up thinking we needed saving. I reached out slowly and rested my hand on the edge of the bed, close but not touching her. Then, do not call it saving. Call it being seen. Her eyes lifted to mine. A fragile quiet stretched between us. And then she asked the question that cut deeper than any other. Why did you stay, Ethan? You could have walked away after the ambulance, after the hospital, after everything. My voice softened in a way I had not expected. Because she trusts me. I nodded toward Mia, who was humming softly as she colored. And because she is not the only one who needed someone to stay. Something shifted in Lily's eyes, something unspoken, something fragile, something that scared her. She looked away again, swallowing hard. I cannot offer anything back, she whispered. I am just me. I kept my voice gentle. I did not ask for anything. Her voice dropped even softer. People like me do not belong in worlds like yours. I leaned forward. Then I will meet you in yours. She froze. Her lips parted slightly. Her eyes flicked to mine and held. And for a moment, something warm flickered through the fear. She said nothing else. She did not have to. Her silence was not rejection. It was the beginning of understanding. A nurse entered then, breaking the moment as she checked Lily's vitals and adjusted her fluids. When she left the room, grew quiet again. Lily settled back against the pillows, her eyes drifting closed. Before sleep pulled her under, she whispered so faintly I almost missed it. "Thank you for seeing me." The words settled into me like a vow, and I knew this was only the first of many truths she would eventually allow herself to speak. Lily's recovery took longer than any of us expected. She moved from crisis to stability, from stability to fragile improvement, and finally to the kind of strength that allowed her to sit up without wincing. Through all of it, I stayed close enough to help when needed, but far enough not to crowd her. She noticed that balance. I could see it in the way she watched me, sometimes cautious at first, then, with a quiet curiosity she tried to hide. Mia, on the other hand, had no hesitation. Every morning she rushed to the hospital room door, as if afraid something might change while she slept. She greeted me with a tired smile that grew brighter each day Lily healed. She had started drawing again, not just pictures of her and her mother, but now pictures that included a third figure with broad shoulders and a slightly crooked smile. She always labeled them with shaky handwriting. Mommy, me, Ethan. She never showed the drawings to Lily, but she always slipped them into my hand when her mother was asleep, whispering. I made another one. I kept every single one. The day Lily was finally discharged, I drove them home in a modest SUV, not wanting to overwhelm her with anything that felt extravagant. It was a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, older, but neat, filled with thrift store furniture and little signs of life in every corner, drawings on the fridge, a pair of tiny shoes by the door, a stack of medical bills hidden under a pile of mail. Lily walked inside slowly, as if re-entering a life she was not sure she still belonged to. She sank onto the couch, one hand resting protectively on Mia's back. Mia curled beside her. I stood near the door, unsure whether to stay or leave, unsure whether she wanted space or company. She noticed my hesitation. "You can sit," she said, "only if you want to." Her tone was soft, almost shy. I sat in the chair across from them. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, just new, just delicate. After a while, Mia leaned her head against her mother and drifted into a nap. Lily brushed hair from her daughter's forehead. "She looks peaceful," I murmured. "Yes, it has been a long time since she could sleep without fear." I hesitated. "And you. When was the last time you felt safe?" She looked down at her hands, twisting them in her lap. "I do not know. Maybe never." I wanted to tell her she was safe now, but I knew those words had to be earned, not spoken. I waited instead. Eventually, she looked up. "I do not understand you, Ethan. You are a CEO. You have everything. Why are you in my living room? Why are you helping me?" The truth rose easily, surprising me with how steady my voice sounded. "Because somewhere between the moment I carried your daughter into the ambulance and the moment I saw you breathe again, I realized something. You make me want to stay." She froze. A soft flush crept into her cheeks, subtle but unmistakable. "That is not something you should say to someone who works for you. Not while you are still CEO." I nodded. "You are right." Which is why 2 days ago I submitted my resignation as acting CEO. Her eyes widened. "What?" I leaned back slightly. "I will transition into a consulting role. Advisory only. No executive authority. No power differential. Nothing that would place pressure or expectation on you." She stared at me, stunned. "You quit your job for me." "No. I stepped down because I have spent years building something that was empty, and because if I ever want something real, something honest, I cannot sit behind a desk while the world falls apart outside." Her breath hitched, not with pain this time, but with disbelief. And with something else she was trying very hard not to let me see. She whispered, "You are different from the man I imagined." "So are you," I said quietly. The woman I met that night was terrified, but the woman I see now is strong enough to argue with me. Her lips tugged into the smallest reluctant smile. "Do not make me laugh. It hurts when I laugh." I smiled back, unable to hide the warmth that rose in my chest. "Then, I guess I will just sit here quietly until you heal." The smile faded, replaced with a seriousness that felt heavier than the room. "Ethan, I am grateful, but I cannot be something you fix. I cannot be a replacement for someone you lost. I nodded once. You are not. You are someone I want to know differently. Slowly. Carefully. Without expectation. She studied my face, searching for the pressure she feared, the strings she was used to, the false kindness she had seen in others. She found none. Finally, she whispered, I do not know how to let someone help me and not feel like I owe them everything. Then, do not owe me anything. Just let me be here. She looked at Mia sleeping peacefully with her small fingers curled into Lily's shirt. Then she looked back at me. Will you stay for dinner? Only if it does not hurt you. She let out a gentle breath that might have been the closest thing she had to a laugh. I am too tired to cook, but we have soup. And Mia likes when someone sits with us. Not someone. You. The simplicity of it landed deeper than any confession could have. I stayed. I heated the soup. I sat across from her at a tiny chipped table while Mia ate sleepily beside her mother. And for the first time in years, life felt less like something I was surviving and more like something I was beginning. When I left later that night, Lily walked me to the door. She hesitated before speaking. Mia will be 7 next month. She paused. She would like it if you came. I felt something in my chest loosen, expand, settle. I will be there. Her eyes dropped to the floor, then lifted again. And maybe, she swallowed, maybe we can try being in each other's lives. Slowly, carefully. My voice lowered. I want that. The moment hung between us, gentle and warm. She nodded once, then closed the door softly, and for the first time in a very long time, I walked away carrying hope instead of regret. 1 year can feel like a lifetime or a breath depending on how much of your world changes inside it. For us, it changed everything. Seattle greeted the winter with its usual mix of soft rain and drifting snow coating the streets with a quiet shimmer that made the city feel gentler than it really was. As I walked up the path toward the community clinic, the frost crunched beneath my shoes. The sun was just beginning to rise pale and tired behind the clouds, but I felt something warmer inside me than I had in years. Through the glass doors, I spotted Lily at the reception counter, her blonde hair pulled back loosely, her posture confident in a way that still surprised me even after a year. She wore a simple pale blue blouse and a badge that read Medical Assistant. She was helping an elderly man fill out a form, speaking softly, patiently, with a steadiness that came not just from healing, but from purpose. Purpose she had earned step by step, breath by breath, through the kind of strength people only see when they finally stop looking away. When she noticed me, her face lit up with a smile that still had the power to hit me straight in the chest. "You are early," she said as I approached. I shrugged lightly. "Thought I would walk you two to the gala." She laughed under her breath, the soft kind she only learned to let out in the past few months. Mia burst out from behind the counter in a swirl of navy fabric and bouncing energy. She wore a tiny sparkly dress she had picked out herself, proud as if she were heading to a royal ball. "Ethan, look, I have shoes that do not hurt anymore." She lifted her foot dramatically, showing off polished flats. Lily shook her head lovingly. "She has been practicing twirling for an hour." I raised an eyebrow. "Should I be concerned?" Probably, Lily replied with a smile, but only a little. The three of us walked together through the chilly morning, our breaths rising in clouds. Mia skipped ahead, crunching through patches of snow while humming the melody of a holiday song she had learned in school. I carried the small tote bag that held her scarf gloves and the handmade card she insisted on giving to the event's organizers. Her handwriting had improved. Her drawings had too. Her world had widened in ways I sometimes struggled to comprehend. When we arrived at the venue, the gala hall shimmered with warm lights and soft gold decorations. It was the annual inspiration event hosted by the Hale Foundation, though few knew the foundation's programs were born from a single night a year earlier. Few knew that the very first scholarship recipient the Little Stars Award had been a small girl who quietly waited in an empty lobby while her mother worked herself into collapse. The crowd inside shifted into respectful silence as the host introduced this year's speakers. Lily looked suddenly nervous. I touched her elbow gently. "You do not have to do this if you are not ready." She inhaled slowly. I am ready because I am terrified, she whispered. Growth still scares me, but not as much as stepping back now would. She walked onto the stage with a grace she never knew she had. Mia and I sat in the front row. Lily looked out at the audience, then at us, and then she began to speak. There was a time, she said, her voice steady but warm, when I believed silence was survival. When the best thing I could do for my daughter was endure quietly work until my body broke and hope no one noticed the cracks. She paused. The room leaned in. I worked nights because they paid 50 cents more an hour. I skipped doctor appointments because the copay was the same price as our groceries for the week. I hid my illness because getting sick meant getting replaced. People in the audience shifted, recognizing the truth in those words. Then her voice softened. But someone saw me. Not as a burden, not as a charity case, as a human being trying her best. That changed everything. She glanced at me, the slightest tremor of emotion crossing her eyes. I realized accepting help is not failure. Sometimes it is the doorway to standing again. The audience erupted into applause. Mia clapped with her whole body, her tiny frame shaking with pride. After the event, people gathered around Lily, thanking her, shaking her hand, telling her she inspired them. She handled it with quiet grace, her cheeks flushed, but her smile genuine. When the crowd finally thinned, the three of us slipped outside into the falling snow. Mia ran ahead, catching snowflakes with her hands spinning slowly in her new shoes. Lily and I walked behind her in comfortable silence. Snow cushioned our steps, the world soft around us. After a while, Lily spoke. You know there is something I never asked you. What is that? Why did you stay all this time? Even after I got better. Even after I pushed you away a few times. I looked at her, really looked at her. At the strength she did not hide anymore. At the softness she finally allowed herself. At the woman she had become. I did not stay because you needed me, I said quietly. I stayed because I needed you. She stopped walking. So did I. Snow drifted between us slow and gentle. Her voice lowered. And if I told you that I want you in our lives, not out of gratitude, not because of the past, but because I want you here with us. Not just today, not just in emergencies. Here. Would you believe me? My breath left me in a slow exhale. Yes, because I have wanted the same thing for a long time. Her eyes softened, shining in the pale lamplight. She reached out and took my hand, not the cautious touch she used in recovery, not the distant politeness she had learned to survive with. This was different, real, certain. Ahead of us, Mia spun toward us, cheeks rosy from the cold. Mommy, she called out, is Ethan part of our family now? Lily looked at me, her hand tightening around mine. Only if he wants to stay, she answered. I squeezed her hand gently. I have been staying since that night, I said. I am not going anywhere. Mia threw her arms into the air, squealing with joy before sprinting toward us. She latched onto both our legs, anchoring us together in the falling snow. That moment froze in my memory like a photograph I never wanted to lose. The mother who fought alone, the child who feared losing everything, and the man who finally stopped running from the past. 1 year had changed us, but this moment defined us. And as snowflakes drifted gently around us, I realized something with absolute certainty. This was family now, and this time, nothing would take it away. Sometimes when a story ends, what lingers is not the final scene, but the quiet truth it leaves in our hands. And if you are still here, still listening, still holding on to the warmth of this journey, then maybe this story meant something to you in a way words alone cannot fully capture. Maybe you saw a reflection of your own past, or someone you once loved, or a version of yourself that carried too much alone for too long. Maybe you felt the weight of those nights when you wished someone would notice your struggle, or the mornings when strength felt like something borrowed rather than something owned. Maybe like Ethan you have known regret, or like Lily you have known fear, or like Mia you have known the fragile hope that someone somewhere will choose to stay. And if this story touched even the quietest part of your heart, then I want to invite you into something more than a channel, something more than a video, something more than a passing moment on your screen. I want to invite you into a community of people who believe in healing, in second chances, in the softness of human connection, and in the idea that kindness does not need to be loud to change a life. Stories like this are not just entertainment. They are reminders that love can grow in unexpected places, that compassion can rebuild what was once broken, and that no one, absolutely no one, is meant to walk through their hardest days unseen. And if you felt that truth rising inside you, if you felt even a shimmer of emotion as Ethan held Mia's hand in the hospital, or when Lily finally allowed herself to hope again, then I want to ask you gently but sincerely to stay with us a little longer. By liking this video, you help these stories reach someone who may need them tonight. By subscribing, you become part of a circle of listeners who believe in the quiet strength of the human spirit. By commenting, you tell us your voice matters, your story matters, your memories matter. And by sharing, you may become the reason someone else feels less alone. This channel is built for people like you. People who have lived, who have loved, who have lost, who carry wisdom written in years and moments both beautiful and painful. It is built for those who know the world can be harsh but still choose tenderness. For those who believe in redemption even when life has taken more than it has given. For those who find comfort in stories that remind them that healing does not have an age limit and hope does not expire. So if your heart is still open in this moment, if you feel that gentle ache behind your ribs that says, "I needed this," then do not let this be the last time we meet. Let us grow together, reflect together, breathe together. Let us hold on to the reminder that even in our darkest seasons, someone can step into our lives not to fix us, but to walk beside us while we learn to stand again. If this story warmed your spirit, if it made you tear up, if it made you remember someone who shaped you, or someone you wish you could hug one more time, then please stay. Tap the like button, leave a comment telling us what part moved you. Subscribe so you never miss the next story of resilience and love, and share this with someone who deserves to feel seen tonight. Until our next story, take care of your heart, take care of your memories, and remember this: healing is not a destination, it is a journey we walk together.